Hey everyone, Sparks back with another Goddess Victory Nikke video, and we have the full kit for Little Mermaid slash Siren, and let me tell you, she is a banger, okay? I have heard some chatter online that she's not that great. Let me tell you right now, I'm calling it. She is going to be extremely strong, okay? Everybody feel free to tell me why I'm wrong in the comments. We'll see, we'll see. It's risky making claims on the internet, but let's take a look at her kit, and I want to just give you a few highlights before we actually go through all of her skill effects line by line. Some of the best things about her is that she has a 7.5 second CDR, which is comparable to Rappy, which is the best CDR in the game. The burst fill speed is crazy. She has a burst fill speed effect in addition to the CDR. And she can probably actually deal decent damage on her own with high base value damage. Talk more about that in a second. And the sum of her buffs is very strong. She does so many things. She's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. She's got extremely high value and is good for new players to grab, even if they can't fully utilize her right away. We'll talk about some of the ways you can probably maximize her potential, but you're going to want to get her no matter what. Shout out to anybody starting right now with the 2.5 anniversary. This is going to be a good time for you to jump in, by the way. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at her skills. So she is a Burst 1 supporter, and she has a submachine gun. She is wind type. She has an ammo capacity of 120, reload time of 1 second, and deals 10.12% of attack as damage with her standard attack, okay? So this is the highest I believe we have in the game for any submachine gun. The standard submachine gun value is about 8%. And then some of them are as low as like 5%. So 10% of attack as damage from a submachine gun is very good. Submachine guns are kind of known as the weakest units in the game as far as just their damage dealing potential, and this is going to put her above pretty much any of the rest of those. Now, just because she is a submachine gun supporter, does that mean she can't deal any damage or she's a bad unit? I mean, I'll remind you that one of the best units in the game, Leader, is also a supporting submachine gun user, but Leader's personal damage is pretty much terrible. It's the other effects that, make her so good. Little Mermaid might have a little bit of both, so something to consider there. I said right away when we got her first announced that she would need to have some type of cooldown reduction to be considered a top tier unit, and it looks like we got it. I mean, let's take a look at her actual skills here. So skill 1 is Bubble Order, and it says activates only when in focusing status, affects all allies, focus fire continuously. Okay, so that's going to make everybody way more accurate, which is also one of the main weaknesses of a submachine gun. So that's pretty great right away. Fixes one of those inherent problems. And then activates when full burst ends. So anytime your burst cycle ends, whether she was the one that bursted or not, although she's a 20-second burst 1, so she's always going to be bursting if you've set up your teams properly. It says cooldown of burst skill goes down 7.48 seconds, which again is the same as Rappy Red Hood, which is extremely good. And then it says activates when entering full burst, affects all allies. Attack damage goes up 4% for 10 seconds. Attack damage is always good. Now, this is a very small buff of only 4%, but I remind you that attack damage is at the very end of that damage formula and is the best possible way that you can buff your damage for any type of buff in the game. So even 4% can make a pretty decent difference. And then it says activates each time total ammo consumed by allies reaches 400, affects all allies, fill burst gauge by 37%. So filling your burst gauge by 37% will probably instantly put you into that full burst. Now, it's 400 bullets that have to be shot, but it is combined over your whole team. So this can happen very rapidly, particularly when combined with MG users. So one of the most effective raid teams that we've used before is with Grave and combining her with other MG users such as Ray and Modernia. Others you can, of course, use because MGs fire so quickly and they have such a large clip, you can easily dump that very quickly and get that massive burst gauge fill. Also, as a submachine gun user, she'll help with that because she does fire so rapidly. But you'll probably want to, combine her with those MGs just to maximize that potential if you can. So already skill 1 is extremely stacked. Now let's take a look at her skill 2 called Bubble Wave. And it says activates when the enemy appears, affects the target, bubble, damage taken goes up 5% continuously. Okay, now this is very interesting. So it says activates when the enemy appears, affects the target. This is very specific wording, and Shift Up is known for very bad translations and localizations. So we don't know if this is 100% accurate of what this is actually going to say in the in-game text, or if this is exactly what it will do, even if this is what it says. But something that I want to remind you about is that Viper, and I believe we had a couple other units that could do similar things too, has an effect like this that was recently updated. So they changed the wording to, as they said, clarify what it actually does. And she had an effect, I think it was in her skill 2. Let me look this up. Yes, okay, it was skill 1, sorry. Activates when the target appears, affects all allies, okay? So this is slightly different wording, right? Also in her burst, activates when the designated enemy unit, including the stage target, affects the same enemy unit, okay? So she has these things about talking about when the target appears or designated enemy unit includes the stage target, and this says activates when the enemy appears, affects the target. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's not completely clear if this is just going to activate on any enemy unit that she's targeting, or if this only affects the boss of a stage, or if this will work in PvP against other Nikkes. So my guess here is that this is only going to work on the actual boss of a stage and not on random enemies or on Nikkes. So because it says activates when the enemy appears, affects the target. And again, if this is accurately translated or localized, the target is defined as the boss of a stage. And so I think that's only going to affect that. Now, 99% of the times isn't really going to matter because it's not like a big deal that we need really powerful effects for fighting mobs. And, you know, using her in PvP probably wouldn't be that relevant anyway, just because her other effects and being a submachine gun user, and like one of the big things about her is that she has cooldown reduction, and like all this stuff doesn't take really into effect in arena. But I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. Let me know what you think the best interpretation of this is, but that is how I think this is going to work. Okay, but continuing on, it says activates after landing 50 normal attacks, which again is going to happen really rapidly because she is a submachine gun user. Affects the target if the target is in bubble status. She gets explosive bubble, and then attack damage goes up by 5.05% continuously, stuns them for 3 seconds, and then removes bubble. Okay, so the first part of that, when the enemy appears, they get bubble status and they get damage taken up 5%. And then when this activates after 50 normal attacks, it's going to remove that original bubble effect and replace it with explosive bubble. The damage taken stays exactly the same, but it stuns them for 3 seconds. So basically, it just upgrades the bubble slightly. It just adds a stun effect. I feel like this is a little overly wordy. It could have just said, you know, stuns the enemy for 3 seconds, because that's the only thing that really changes here. But this, if it's going to be relevant or not, I don't know. I mean, this could help in pushing hard mode campaign where you have a target that appears after mobs. Potentially, this will probably not be super relevant for actual like big story bosses or raid bosses, because it's only going to happen like that one time, right? Because once you remove the bubble status, there's no way to add bubble again, so you can't add explosive bubble again as well, because they have to have the original bubble status for it to work. So the rest of the skill says activates every 1 second only during full burst, affects random enemy units, deals 63% of final attack as damage, attacks sequentially 4 times. So 4 times 63% of final attack as damage is going to be pretty effective. If there's only one boss on the field, it's going to hit them 4 times. If not, you know, you're going to like deal some damage to random mobs. And then it says activates each time total ammo consumed reaches 500, affects random enemy units Bubble Barrage deals 85% of final attack as damage, attack sequentially 10 times. So 10 times 85% of final attack as damage is going to be extremely damaging. This is a very, very impressive skill. After 500 ammo, that is, not going to go off super often, but that is still going to be a ton of damage. These are a lot of final attack values, which means you want to invest in her as much as possible, increasing that gear, get more duplicates of her, level everything up as much as possible. So that could be considered a downside, but these are very good. Anytime you see these final attack values, that's always a good sign. Okay, especially because she is a supporter, so she will have slightly lower base values compared to like an attacker. So when you can boost that with final, things from gear and stuff, the difference becomes very, very small compared to like an attacker versus a supporter or whatever. Like because the percentage is much closer. Okay, so now let's take a look at her burst skill. It does have a 20-second cooldown. I mentioned this already. That is key. That instantly makes her way more usable than if you had to pair her with another burst 1. It says affects all allies. Attack damage goes up 10% for 10 seconds. So just attack damage up for everyone by 10%. That's very good. Again, 10% is kind of a low value, but everyone getting a final multiplier is going to be very good. It also reloads 30% of the magazine for all allies. So this is going to be really good for anyone who has a lot of ammo, again, such as MG users. So again, she's going to be very good paired with those MG users. But for almost all units, getting a reload buff is going to be very good. And then affects herself. Attack goes up by 17% of casters' attack for 10 seconds. So this is not final attack, and it only buffs herself, but it's gonna help her own individual damage output. And again, the more dupes you have of her, it's going to increase that because it's not going to take into account all of her gear and other buffs because it is base attack versus final attack. So I think she looks very, very strong. But let's talk about some more things here. So you'll probably want to pair her with MG units to make sure you can dump ammo fast to get that 400 ammo mark, so you can get that burst fill speed. And then you want to make sure not to pair her with last bullet effects such as Dorothy or Privity, some others that I can't think of off the top of my head, because she is going to reload part of that magazine from that last effect that we just read. And of course you want to be able to cycle through that as much as possible. There's a lot going on here, so hopefully I didn't make this too confusing for any new players, but just know that these are all good things, and those are a couple things to be made aware of. And now let's get back to like some of the things that like really makes her insane. So basically, she combines Blanc, Noir, Volume, Viper, and Grave all into one unit, okay? Like, let that sink in for a second. Even if her values are a little lower, she has all these effects. Also, props to Shift Up for fitting this all on one slide, so we don't have one of those like multi-skill pages, okay? That's annoying. But she does so much. Combining just Rappy's CDR with Graves' burst fill speed into one unit is nuts on its own. Okay, like I can't stress just how valuable that is. That is going to make you cycle through burst extremely quickly, and it frees up an additional spot. Okay, because you're not having to use Rappy and Grave together or Double D and Grave together. Okay. She just does it on her own, and then you can get more additional effects from another unit that you choose. So just that already makes her a S tier unit. And again, she can probably deal decent damage on her own compared to other submachine gun users. The obvious parallel here is like Volume as being a wind burst 1 with CDR. Volume was hanging on as being kind of the 5th choice for raid teams. She'll probably finally get kicked out, which surprisingly she was kind of staying ahead of Dorothy in most cases. But anyway, I think that Little Mermaid is going to be supplanting that position at this point. And being able to deal higher damage as a submachine gun is pretty notable because, like I said, generally submachine gun users are weak, and Little Mermaid is probably going to hit harder than most of those submachine gun users. And the total combined effect of her buffs is very strong, okay? So you might see, oh, it's only 10% here, 5% here, 15% here, whatever. But all those things combined, the cumulative effect is going to be extremely valuable for buffing your whole squad. I'm not sure what else to say here. I mean, like I said, she does have some cons. I would say she's extremely valuable and good for new players to grab, even if you can't utilize her right away. Maybe you don't have all the MG units to combine her with, but she also kind of just does everything on her own. Like, you're still going to get great value out of her as a new player. The only real downside here, especially from a new player's perspective, is that she will benefit from duplicates. But even then, I would probably not stress on getting all those duplicates. I will most likely be targeting more duplicates on Mihara, which is our other anniversary unit. We'll see her full kit. I'll be putting out a skill analysis video for her as soon as we get that. She's going to be a burst 3 attacker, and so generally getting more dupes of her is going to be more valuable. Also, her lobby wallpaper is peak, whereas Mermaid's is kind of mid. So there's that to consider too. So, if you're thinking about how to divide your resources without knowing 100% of what Mihara's kit does, I would probably say put more into Mihara. Again, that's speculation. But you certainly want to get one copy of Mermaid. Just know that additional copies will help her with pushing up the values of her other things. But the most important things about her are the burst fill speed and the cooldown reduction, which are going to be just as good with one copy. So just remember, she's going to be a strong do-it-all unit, even if some of those buffs are a little bit lower when you compare them to some units like Blanc or Crown or whatever that kind of have some of the same things. But Mermaid will do so many things in one unit. That's kind of her big strength. All right, I think I'm starting to ramble and repeat myself here, but I just wanted to make sure everyone was kind of clear on this. But let me know if I'm wrong, okay? Am I reading this situation wrong? I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is an L take here. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already, so you can get my analysis of Mihara as soon as that drops. Please subscribe. If you're not, welcome any brand new players, and I'll catch you guys in the next video or stream.